In the World Series. And Pat is right. We both are sharing that euphoria of rooting on the Cubs. My family, I think I might have told you all this, but if I didn't, or if you don't know that about me, but I'm like a fourth-generation Cubs fan. My grandfather was huge in helping me become a Cubs fan, and I've been excited about this. This has been a long time coming. I waited my whole life to see this, and I played baseball, loved to watch baseball, and my wife is the greatest wife on the planet because we had a family little getaway this weekend that we were planning already. I'd already come up with our family hashtag. It was like the Quinn Leaf Tour 2016. We were supposed to go look at all the leaves changing. I was semi-excited about it, and about going through the mountains and looking at all the leaves, and my wife wanted to take beautiful fall pictures of the kids and everything else, and then the Cubs went to the World Series. And she said to me, "Hey, honey, the leaves will always change this time every year, but the Cubs, it could be another 108. So I think you should go to Chicago this weekend." And I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" And she's like, "No, your sister and I have been talking, and your mother's going, and I have family up and around that area." And she's like, "I think you need to go to Chicago." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I totally married the right girl." Like, this is outstanding. So I'll contain myself tonight, but you need to know, like, I am very much excited about what what I'm witnessing and seeing with the Cubs. That's pretty awesome to do. I was yelling and screaming when they went into the World Series, and it was like, 11 o'clock at night or whatever, and she's like, "Look, the kids are really asleep." And I couldn't even help it. I turned to her and I said, "Wake them up!" Not good parenting. So tonight, let's talk about how to ruin your child again, and what that looks like in our lives. Obviously, we're not going to be ruining our children. I hope you had a chance to look at that sheet last week, this one right here on the back of it. I hope you had an opportunity to kind of take a little self-inventory with your family. I'm going to give you a chance to kind of talk about that in a few moments, because I think if there's anything that you would like to share in a table and have some discussion around that, I want you to be able to do that. And then I have another sheet that is around the table. It looks very similar. It has the same front to it, but there's a different back that's an exercise for you that we'll talk about later tonight. But I want to talk about gluttony this evening. And really talk about all of the deadly sins. We talked a little bit about pride last week, about power versus influence, that we need to have more influence in our children's lives than we do power. But I want to talk about the deadly sins tonight, and this is the way this is going to go. We're going to talk about the deadly sins tonight a little bit, but primarily through the lens of gluttony, and there's a reason for that. And then we'll talk about the cardinal virtues, because I want to get through the sin stuff tonight, and then we'll talk about the virtues as we close out our time together. I think that's a good way to break this up. And so we're going to have to kind of move through some things tonight that I think are really important for us if we're going to really experience what the virtues can be in our lives. And so when I think about gluttony, well, let me ask it this way. When you think about gluttony, what do you think about? What comes to mind first? Food. Food comes to mind first, of course, and that is what we would think about, and especially in our nation, we deal with a lot of food issues in our nation, and we deal with a lot of obesity in our nation, and we deal with a lot of childhood obesity now in our nation, and we have a lot of those things. But when I was thinking through gluttony, for me as a dad, I was thinking about it in terms of basically consumerism with America, and what my children are exposed to versus what I see when I go in the third world. Because I've had the privilege, and I count it as a privilege, to be able to walk among some great, amazing followers of Jesus in the third world. And to be able to see their lives versus my life has put me in a place where I've been convicted over and over and over again. And let me say it this way. when I first went to Haiti about 6 or 7 years ago, and I've been there now almost every year, 2 or 3 times a year, and I have some good friends in Haiti now that are Haitian. And when I first went there, something happened in my heart that I had never experienced before. And it's going to sound a little superficial, but bear with me. But there was a lesson that I learned there that I just had never really let sink into my own heart. I grew up a military kid, moved all around the world, and had the privilege of doing that. But it was pretty much a kind of a middle class home is what I grew up in, an average kind of military middle class home. My parents were divorced when I was 12, and so I lived through that nightmare, honestly, of what that was from my childhood and with my younger sister, and then growing up in that home, I was the first person in my family to really go to college right after high school, let alone then go off and get a master's degree, and then like Rusty said, and I worked really hard to get my doctorate, and it's been a journey throughout my life in that way. And so there's a reason why I'm telling you all that, is that I go to Haiti, and for the first time in my life, when Jesus said that it's harder for the rich man to get into heaven than it is for a camel to go through the eye of a needle, I always thought he was talking about Bill Gates. But when I went to Haiti, I realized I'm the rich man. It was the first time in my life that I had ever considered myself a rich man. I'd never thought of myself as a rich man, ever. I'd always thought of myself as way down the totem pole than that. And then I went to Haiti. And then I went back again and again and again. And I was struck by my wealth. I could not get it off my mind. And I had never, ever thought of myself ever in a million years as a wealthy person. And then I realized I am wealthy. I am rich beyond belief. And I never thought of myself that way. And you may not have ever thought of yourself that way, but the truth of the matter is that if you have a job in America, you are in the top 1% in the world. In the world. If you are even in the middle class in America, you are in the top 0.5% of wage earners in the entire world. We are in the top 2%, basically, of the entire world, and we don't really think about it that way. There's 98% of the world that live far below us, and I mean far, far below. It is a far cry how far below they live than we do. And it was the first time in my life that I really let that sink in. And some of you won't completely even understand that and may want to argue with me on that, and I would argue too. But you just need to get on a plane and go, because I would have argued too. And then my wife went 2 years later. My wife went with me to Haiti, and I'd been telling her all about Haiti. I've been telling her about the beautiful parts of Haiti, and Haiti is beautiful. I've been telling her about how amazing the people are in Haiti and everything, but I'd also been telling her how my heart had been changed and how things had been working in my heart. And then I took her on a trip, and we crossed over this bridge, and we were taking the group through one of the poorer sections, and we crossed this bridge, and literally the trash was built up higher than this table, and in this river, basically, because they don't have sanitation. You learn to appreciate a lot of things. Like, I love that people come and pick up my trash now. I used to not love that. I mean, I go out and I shake their hands. I tell them how much I appreciate them. I've left them Coca-Colas in the summer, on the trash can. I mean, I'm like, look, I love that there are people in this country that they come get my trash because of what I've seen. But anyway, so this van's going over, and there's a dad that is maybe, from me to this table, that's chest deep in the trash, and he's chunking things out of the trash to his children that are on the side, and they're eating and everything. And my wife looks at me, and my wife is an accountant. She's stoic. She is black and white, and she's not like a big emotional crier, so that's the one thing that you guys need to know when I tell you this. But she looks over at me, and she's got big crocodile tears in her eyes, and I don't see my wife cry very often. And she looks at me, and she goes, "You said they were poor, but there's no definition for this." And I said, "Yeah, I know." And it just changed her in that same way. So when I'm saying gluttony tonight, how do we address who we are in this country, and how we utilize our resources, how we live our lives, and how we equip our children to live their lives closer to the heart of God, because we have some definite luxuries that we live with every single day. And if we don't address that, when we say that we spoil our kids, there is some definite issues that we do with our children on that matter. Now, I'm not here to tell you, what to do practically or anything like that, but these are some of those deadly sins, right, that kind of get into your heart. And if you'll let it kind of sink in, and I hope that you have felt a little bit of the weight of tonight, because you're like, wow, this was a lot more fun a week ago, but I wanted you to kind of feel the weight of that a little bit, because it opens up your world too. If you could let it sink in, if you'll let these sins sink into your life a little bit, and I don't mean you practicing them, but I mean you thinking through them, it'll open up your heart to ways in which you can parent your children through that channel a little easier. Because I don't believe that anyone in here is sitting here tonight because you want your child to fall into one of these deadly sins. I believe that you're sitting here tonight because you would love nothing more than for them to stay away and steer away from these things. And if you could let these sink in, then it'll help you better how to channel through and move through some of these issues. So when you think about gluttony has a lot to do with the other sins. I mean, when you think about lust, envy, even sloth, wrath, right? All of these you could relate to gluttony. And let me tell you how. Rockefeller, one of the richest people ever, right? Back in the day, Rockefeller. He was asked a question that I thought was very interesting. And I put that in the book. He was asked about, how much money do you need? How much money do you need? And his answer was just a little bit more. Just a little bit more. And I think that was a great answer, because I think that's everybody's answer. I don't think that's just a rich man in our country's answer. I think that's all of our answers. Because if you ask me, I'm like, I just need a little bit more. I'm not sure, how much I'm going to need for retirement, or how much I'm going to need to raise my family this next year, or what. I just need just a little bit more. And so it's this sin of more that is really what I want to get at with gluttony. It's the sin of more. More. And so when you talk about gluttony being related to these other ones, it's lust, it's I need something more, right? It's greed, I need something more. It's even sloth. I want to be more lazy. I want some more in my life. I want other people to do it. And so it's even there. Or wrath, anger. It's sometimes you're not getting your way and you want more. And so in the book, I talk about this analogy of the wolf inside. The wolf inside. And what are you feeding? What are you feeding the wolf? Because you feed the wolf one thing or the other. You have this wolf, and you're going to feed the wolf either something good, or you're going to feed the wolf something bad. And so what are you feeding the wolf inside of you? And that's kind of something that I think you got to think through when you look at these sins versus the virtues. Are you feeding yourself in a way that you're becoming more into a gluttony type lifestyle, or are you feeding yourself so that you're becoming more generous? Or greedy to generosity, or lust to being able to live into chastity. Health and wholeness. How are you feeding yourself? Because that is, if you don't diagnose that, if you don't diagnose these things, it rolls over into your children's lives. And that's the thing that I realized about with my oldest daughter, my 19-year-old that I told you about last week, is I realized there were some things that I was watching her do as she got older in her teenage years, because they start becoming their own little people. And I started watching her do things, and at the same time I'm reading the scriptures, and I'm going, why is she doing this? And then I started seeing it in me. I started realizing, I think I was teaching her this without even realizing I was teaching her this. And that's why I wrote the book the way I did. You see, this book, you could read it and not be a parent, because it's really about who are you becoming. And that's what we're talking about tonight. Who are you becoming? Because who you're becoming is ultimately has a huge impact on who your child is becoming. My daughter, she got into a situation once where she said, Daddy, some people at school, I'm not understanding some of the things that are going on at my school. And so, well, talk to me about it. And she told me that, some people at her school were treating some people in the minority a little differently than she was comfortable with. And it was actually some Jewish kids. And she was a little uncomfortable with that. And she said, and I said, well, how are they treating them? And she said, well, they're trying to win them to Jesus all the time. And I said, well, that's not horrible, And she said, yeah, but it's the way that it's done. It's always done as if these people aren't really their friends. It's talked about in other places like they're really just a project. Can we actually get this person to convert to Christianity? And so I don't really feel like they're being their true friend. Now she's like 15 years old telling me this story. And I'm like, wow. And she said, you've always taught me that people are people, that we should love people. And I said, yeah. And she said, well, I feel like sometimes people treat people like they're projects. And I said, wow. And she said, do you think that in the church that you have ever communicated to go out and do something like that to people, to treat them like projects? And I was like, whoa, I got to think about that, about what I'm saying, how I'm preaching, the things that I'm talking about. Because she said, I want to treat people like people, and hopefully then they see Jesus. And I said, well, that's a really good thing. I think that you should definitely do that. And she said, well, I feel like that's the way you and Mom have been. And I said, well, great. And she said, but do you preach that way too? And I was like, I think so. I hope so. Do you know something I don't know, about that? And she just called that into question. I bring that story up to you to kind of tell you, look at your own life a little bit, and how would you see gluttony in your life? Where do you see that right now? Because I feel like that's an easy one that we could diagnose something in our lives, right? I can tell you where gluttony lived in my life for a little while. Man, that Amazon Prime was like the worst thing I ever signed up for in the beginning. Now I've learned to control it. But in the beginning, I was addicted to the fact that I could have stuff on my door in 2 days. I was buying stuff I didn't even need. Because seriously, I don't know what happened to me, but I got caught up in the fact that I was like, okay, this is just awesome, that this stuff will get delivered to me in 2 days. It was crazy. I'm a little more the spender in my family, okay? My wife is the accountant, and she reins it in. So, we're good, but I'm just saying, if you compare the two of us, she is the one that reins it in, and I'm the one that hits the buy now button. And so I was buying now, and there was a time where my wife came to me after a month, and she said, do you realize how much money you have spent on Amazon this month? And she showed me, and I was like, what? And she goes, oh yeah, and they'll have it to you in 2 days, And I was like, oh my gosh. She said, you're their favorite person they see coming. They'll sell you that membership all day long. And it was true. I was totally into Amazon Prime, and I wasn't even realizing that I was buying stuff that I didn't really need. Because, the problem is that you buy something, and then they say, and this is frequently bought with that. Oh, and I'm like, well, then I must need that too. And I can't tell you how many times I was like, well, let's try it out. It's only like 10 more bucks, but you do that 20 times in a month, right? And so that's what I was doing. And I ran up my credit card, and I didn't realize that it was so easy to spend. It was so easy to make that happen. And so, that was a good example for me and my children. Okay? So my children, they started saying, well, just get it from Amazon, because they always have that nice box that says Amazon on the side, so everyone knows where you're getting it from. So my children, when I would say, well, no, we can't do that, or we can't buy that, or whatever, they were like, well, just get it from Amazon, or I don't have time, right? I don't have time to go to the store right now. My daughter would say, just get it from Amazon. And my wife would say, you know why they're saying that, right? They're not saying that because I'm buying it. They're saying that because you're doing it all, and the boxes are right there, and they get home from school, and here's Daddy's Christmas morning every day. And so that's what was happening. And so I had to learn from that over and over and over again. So there's another thing about gluttony, how, and that goes for every deadly sin. How are you living into one of these? Or how are you trying to avoid these? But for me, when I think about gluttony, also I think about something else that I think is important for us to just kind of mention tonight when we think about our parenting, is the over-scheduled life. I don't know how many of you feel this way, but I feel like oftentimes like my life is way overscheduled. I just feel like I'm way overscheduled. I don't have enough time to just be. And then I start looking at my calendar, and guess whose fault it is? It's mine. It's my fault. I'm the one that did it. I'm the one that put all of this into place. And then we feel the same way with our children. We feel the same way with our children, and we do this to our children. We overschedule our children like crazy. And I'm not saying that all of us do that, but I know that for a season, that's something that my wife and I did. We felt like to be good parents, we needed to overschedule our children. I wouldn't say that that's what we were saying, but we were signing them up for everything because they need to be involved in everything, every activity. And if you're not careful, because social media, you feel like a loser parent. Like if they're not at the ballet thing, and then at the gymnastics thing, and then at the softball thing, and then at the over at the Bible study at the church, 3 things at the church that you need to be in. And I mean, I'm sorry if I'm, but I mean, like we do all of these things. Oh, we got the football game on Saturday, and on Sunday we've got 3 birthday parties to go to. And then by the time you like look at your week, I mean, all you've done is run your children ragged. I mean, that's what we were doing to our kids, and we were running them like absolute crazy. And I realized one night, what are we doing? Like, is this really healthy? Is this a good idea? And then you go on Facebook, and you think it's a good idea by the time you scroll through everybody's awesome life, And you see all the pictures and all the things that everybody else is doing, and you feel the pressure of needing to keep up with everybody else. And so you're overscheduling, and I think that's another form of gluttony, that we overschedule our children's lives. So, tonight, I want you to just take a few moments around your table, and with that first exercise, and if you weren't here, we do have some that I think you can get, maybe on the back table over there, or you have them. Okay, so go back there and get one of those, and I want you to take just a moment, and this is what I want you to do. Just around your table, did you learn anything by doing this exercise? Because this exercise kind of fits in with what we're talking about. Or is there anything that you learned about yourself, about your family? Now, you don't have to share some deep, dark secret about, some sin or whatever, but did you learn something about yourself or about, life in general, or some revelation that you've had as far as a parent goes when you're thinking about these vices that are there in our lives? And then I'm going to let us talk for a few minutes, and if you're at a table that you're all by yourself, feel free to jump in with another table. Don't stay by yourself, or you want to combine and get some more conversation going, do that. We're gonna take about 5 minutes or so and do that, because I want us to get serious about maybe at least examining a little bit about these vices, and then I'm going to come back and tell you a story about one of them. Go ahead.
Something beautiful to touch me. I know that I'm married, 'cause I am down on my knees, waiting for something beautiful. Quick, and for years I was scared of it. my desire, consume me like a fire, 'cause I just want something beautiful to touch me. I know that I'm in reach, 'cause I am down on my knees and waiting for something beautiful.
More table time here in just a few minutes, but I want to share a couple of thoughts on this. You know, I hope that was a good exercise and take that home. You know, I did this with my wife, and we kind of talked through some of these things before I would bring it and share it with other people. And it was interesting. One thing that I realized about myself was that you know, my wife and I, we do foster care, and so we have 3 children of our own, and then we've taken in 5 years we've had somewhere, I think right now we're, because it ebbs and flows a little bit because of the nature of it, I think we have taken in somewhere around 18, 19, we're approaching 20 children that we've had in our home. We've had 6 at one time. That's the most we've had in our home at one time, plus our children, so that was 9. That was a lot, and that was too much. Honestly, I was ruining kids right and left off of that one. So, because that wasn't good. Anyways, that wasn't a healthy experience for me. I know that I cannot do 9 children at one time, especially from different homes and different backgrounds and behaviors and all that kind of stuff. It was crazy. But we've done foster care for a long time, and so we have our family rhythm at home. And you know, my wife had noticed something about me, and she'd said it a few different times to me, but I kind of didn't. It's not that I didn't take it seriously. I just didn't think that it was that big of an issue. And it was actually this thing, and it was my phone. And being a pastor, always feeling like I need to reply and respond to people, always feeling like I need to check my email, somebody sending me something at 10 at night, or whatever, I need to respond to it, whatever that is. And so I'd let this starting to dominate me. And it was last year that my son, we gave him a laptop that he could start using. And it was actually through watching him start feeling like he needed to be on the laptop all the time, playing his little games, doing his little education stuff. He was always wanting to be on the laptop. I mean, electronics are, king with kids, right? So he's always wanting to be on the laptop. And one day I said to him last year, and my wife had been talking to me about this and everything else, is that I said, son, there are times that you can be on the laptop, and there are times that you need to not be on the laptop. And I said, do you think it's good for you to be on the laptop all the time? And he said, well, I don't, he's very logical, by the way, and he's smarter than me. And he said, well, I don't know if that's, why is that a problem, Dad? I mean, we watch television, you have to do work, you're always on your phone. Like, he listed like a bunch of stuff, and he said phone. You're always on your phone, and I was like, oh my gosh. And this is that thing that my wife had been talking about, and now my son says, you're always on your phone. And so now we live in a home that my wife, we take off our shoes when we enter the house, and that's a good practice that we have, is that we take off of our shoes when we enter our home. We ask other people to take off their shoes when they enter the home. My wife, mainly because she likes to keep the house clean with all the kids running in and out. For me, I grew up for a period of time in Japan, and I like the practice of what that means. You leave the world outside, and your family is inside. So I'm a little more symbolic. She's like, look, I just want a clean floor. And so that's kind of the way that works. But we both agree on it, so it's a good thing. But now we have a basket for our phone. So, and I have to put it in the basket until the kids go to bed. And man, that's hard. Like, it is so hard to put this phone down. And I've realized through that it's like impossible for me sometimes, I mean, I even find myself like coming back over, like I'm like, what is he doing? Like, okay, we're good, and everything. And I'm like, man, that's like a drug or something. I can't stay away from it. And that's been a huge thing for me to realize with gluttony, that I can't seem to put that down. And look at what I'm doing with my children, and they're the first generation, that's going to grow up without technology. Without not knowing a world without technology. I think most of us in here, I know I'm getting a little older, but most of us in here probably can still remember a world without all this technology, but the little people we're raising, they're never going to know any different. This is their world, and they will always have this. It will always be there, and if we don't teach them how to manage it and how to protect themselves from it and how to actually have real life around it. What's another example of why I know this is so important? Because my oldest, who's a sophomore in college, I had to teach her, this is true, she'd probably be a little embarrassed I told you this, but she would tell me, she would argue the point, but it's true, because I'm the parent and I'm right. But I had to teach her how to talk on the phone. Like as a freshman in college. She came home, I listened to her talk on the phone to a professor, right? Now her friends, it's just like, and yada yada, and they just rattle off all that kind of stuff, and every other word is like. And then I heard her talk to an adult, and I was like, well, no. This is not how we have learned phone etiquette, all that. So my son's in cotillion this year, and he's doing the phone stuff, and I'm making him talk on it. He's 11 years old, and I'm like, you are going to learn to talk to people, because in a few short years, your whole world's about to be Instagram and text messages, and you're going to learn how to talk to human beings. And to the point of technology does that, though. It takes some of that human relationship element away, and it's not a bad thing. Look, I love technology. I did my doctorate in technology, and so I love it, but I also you have to harness it, and you have to learn. And we're the first generation that is living with the generation that's not going to know anything else other, right? So I feel like we have a huge responsibility to set the bar, to set the tone of how this should go. Or they're going to be teaching their children, yeah, our parents didn't know how to handle this, so they just kind of let us run wild. They had no clue what was really happening. And so I'm starting to take that seriously, and just not being able to put down my own phone. So that was gluttony for me. Another thing that I want to share with you that was interesting is that I played baseball. I was blessed to play it a little bit on into college. I thought there might be a moment in time where I might even get to play at Wrigley Field, tonight for the World Series. They're not playing there, but you know what I'm saying. And I thought that that was life for me. The reason that's important is because my son, man, from the moment he got here on this earth, I was like, you're going to play baseball. It's going to be awesome. I'm coaching. I'm going to be out there all the time. It's going to be great. So we did that. And he played t-ball. He went through all the little leagues. I'm coaching. At our league in Montgomery, it took me 3 years to become a head coach. Okay? I don't know what's going on, why that took so long, why they had to get blood tests and everything else or whatever to figure this out. But I was like, look, I know how to play baseball, okay, people? This is Little League. I can handle it. And but it took a little while because there's such a waiting list of dads that wanted to coach. And so 3 years later, I'm finally a head coach. My son is playing on the team. We're having a great time. And then he makes the all-star team. And I'm coaching the all-star team with some other dads. And I'm like, this is awesome, right? And we're playing baseball every day. Who wouldn't want to do that? And so we're playing baseball, and we play all summer long into late July. We're still playing baseball, and I'm like, this is a good thing. And so then baseball ends, and fall ball gets ready. And I was thinking, let's do fall ball. This is good. And he said, no, I don't think I want to play fall ball. I said, okay, no problem. And then spring came, and I said, hey, I just signed up they just called me about being a coach. And so we got to get you ready, you got to dust off the glove and it's time to get ready to play baseball. And he said, I don't think I want to play. Well, I'm driving the car. I about wrecked. I was like, you're the only boy I have. You're playing baseball. That's what we do. We play baseball. And, I was looking in the rearview mirror at him and I'm like, what? After I got all that out of my system, I'm like, well, son, so Dad signed up to coach. Took me 3 years to get my position. Why don't you want to play baseball? And he said, it's boring. I said, what do you mean baseball is boring? Baseball is awesome. He goes, Dad, it's boring, and I don't want to play. And I said, okay. Look, I'm good with you not playing, but we're going to need some reasons. This needs, just saying something's boring, I'm not following you on that. And then he, like I told you, he's smarter than me. He said, well, Dad, here's the deal. We went through All-Stars and all that practice and all, regular season, All-Stars, all of that, and I realized something while we were playing All-Stars. And I said, what's that? And he said, you do all that practice, and you hit 3 times in a game, and you maybe field the ball 3 times in a game. That's like 6 times I get to touch the baseball. When I play soccer or when I play tennis, I get to touch the ball all the time. And I'm always moving and I'm always doing something. So your sport is boring. And I don't want to play. It's like, what are you supposed to say to that? So I said, I think you're right. So I called the league and I said, I don't think I'm going to be coaching baseball. And they said, what do you mean you're not going to be coaching baseball? I said, I apparently am not coaching. I had a little rebellion at my house, and I don't have a son who's playing, and I don't think I'll be coaching this year. And he went to play tennis, and here we are 2 years later, and he's playing a lot of tennis now. And that's what he wants to do, and he loves it. And, I'm a supportive dad and all of that about it. I don't know much about tennis, so I just get out there and hit it as hard as I can because that's what you do. And he's like, Dad, that's not what you do. But I'm like, well, that's what you do in baseball, so I'm hitting it. And, and he's the first few times like nailing the back screen, and he's just like, can you hit it in? And I'm like, no, I can't hit it in. You hit baseballs like this. And so, but I learned a valuable lesson in that. I overdid it with my son. I realized that. He was little and I overdid it with him. We were practicing all the time. I loved it, but I'm not so sure he loved it. And I don't even know if I picked up on the signs about that. So I'm being vulnerable with y'all and sharing that. Like, that's a weakness that I saw in myself, and I didn't like that about me. And so that was part of this for me, was trying to kind of think through, okay, what happened there? And how do I adjust that and get better at picking up on those signs? And I think that, baseball being as awesome as it is, and I am looking forward to watching the World Series tonight and all of those things, but to keep it in balance, to keep it very much in a good place for me. And so, I know that you probably have some things like that in your life, and that's why I tell that story. Like, what are those things in your life that you have that maybe, you kind of have to watch your children and see where that is for you. And then there's this other thing that I wanted to talk about, and it goes into rhythm and balance. And that's the notion that I think that we always are trying to find balance in our lives. We're always trying to balance our schedule. We're trying to balance everything. And are they getting too much over here? Are they not getting enough over here? And we're trying to balance life. And I put this in the book because I think this is really important. Andy Stanley talked about this once, and then I picked up on it for parenting, is that, it's the idea of rhythm and reflection. That there's an important part about the rhythm of life. And I think where I made the mistake with baseball was I was trying to do it year-round and every day. And that wasn't good. And then I even thought, okay, well, we'll take off fall ball, but then we'll crank it right back up into spring. And I think that there's an important piece of rhythm in parenting that, that's what I've noticed with my wife and I, is that you have to have a good rhythm, meaning that there are seasons and you have to respect the seasons. And there are seasons in our lives where, you respect even the week, right? The rhythm of the week, that you work for 6 days, as God put it, and then there's a rest, and there's a rhythm. And going to church is part of that rhythm, that there's a rhythm that gets established. For my children, they know that church is a priority to us. And I'll tell you how I made that a priority, because you're looking at me like, well, yeah, you're a pastor, it should be a priority. But one of the things that we do in our family, because I don't want my children to ever think that this is just a job for me, is that even when we're gone on weekends, we go to church somewhere. Wherever we are, we always go to church. I don't look at it as, oh, that's just that thing we do when we're at home. No, that's that thing we do 6 days and we're in church. And 6 days and we're in church. And 6 days and we're in church. I want them to have that rhythm in their life as they grow up, so that that's something that they take with them, and my daughter already at 19, she has said to me, she said, Dad, I got up here my freshman year and I didn't go to church every week. And I said, well, I'm sorry about that. I really hope that you change that behavior and everything. And she didn't through the fall, and she made some mistakes, and she had some things go on in her life. And we talked about it over Christmas break, and I said, what do you think the number one thing that you need to do? And she said, I know. She's like, I need to go to church. She said, because when I go to church every week, it reminds me of who I am. And I thought, thank you, God. Like, yes, maybe when we were on vacation and we still found a church, and she'd roll her eyes at me when she was 13, right? And I'd say, all right, it's Sunday, everybody. And they would say, we're on vacation. And I'm like, yes, you're right. And there's a great church around here somewhere that needs, a few more people to come and sing the praises of the Lord. And my 13-year-old would be like, oh, I remember her looking at me like, Dad, you are crazy. You are nuts. But then I'm looking at her at 19. And she's like, I need that rhythm. That's what she was saying to me at Christmas break. I need that rhythm in my life. So look at the rhythms in your life. What are the rhythms in your parenting? It's not about balancing so much as it is finding those rhythms, those traditions that you put in your home, those rhythms of when you go to bed and when you wake up, and the things that you do in the morning to get your day ready. How are you getting your day ready? How do you get ready for your day? And I'm talking about spiritually. And how are you preparing your child to get ready for the day? How do you close out their day at night? What are the rhythms that you put into place? Is it just that you go plop down in the recliner and say, head to bed, those kind of things. Let me tell you something for those of you that haven't had one leave yet. Now I'm realize a lot more, like now that she's gone and I have 11 and 8 behind me and these foster children, like even my 11-year-old son, I go tuck him into bed. And he's kind of like, Dad, is a little weird, right? But I still do it because I'm like, I only have 7 more years. That's it. And I know it's going to be gone. And I may not always like physically tuck you into bed because I get that when you're 16 and you're kind of becoming a man, that's going to be a little weird, right? To have your dad tuck you into bed or whatever. But I'm at least going up there and I'm addressing him and I'm talking to him and I'm having a conversation with my son at bedtime because I know that that's going to go away. It's going to go away. And now I realize keenly that I'm on the clock. And every single day I have left, it matters. And I want to spend that time in a good rhythm. I want him to have a good rhythm of how he goes to bed, how he wakes up, how my daughter, who's 8, does the same thing. So rhythm versus balance, it really, really matters. And then the thing that I want you to spend a little bit of time, actually we're running out of time, so I may just let you take this back and we'll look at it next week because I'd really be interested in what you have. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make this this time that you kind of go back, and then we will start off with some good table time next week. But I want to explain this on the back because I want to leave you with a scripture tonight. If you'll look at this sheet tonight that I gave you, it's vices and virtues. I'm excited about this exercise for you. What I want you to do about this is going to take a little bit of thinking, okay? A little bit of thinking to do. But I want you to take this with you, and I want you to think about your child, where they are. Now, if you have a baby, that'll be a little harder, so you might need to just think about it with your marriage, right? But this is what I want you to think about. We'll just take one like, greed is easy a lot of times. So what does greed, let's say you have a 4-year-old. What does greed look like when your 4-year-old is acting greedy? What does that look like? Is it that he's taking toys from somebody else? Right? What is greed? How do you identify greed in a 4-year-old? Because how you identify in a 4-year-old versus a 12-year-old would be different, right? What a 12-year-old does that's greedy, you might say something different than what a 4-year-old does. But then, just like we ended last week, this isn't about just seeing those things, but also, what does it look like when they're being generous, when they're offering charity? What does that look like? Like, what does it look like when a 4-year-old does that? Maybe it's that he shares his toy. And maybe that's what you write down. Like, when I see my son or my daughter share their toy out of their toy box or their favorite blanket with their sister or whatever it is. So I want us to learn to identify these deadly sins in our children at an early age and at every age-appropriate level, and then also to look at these virtues, these vices and these virtues, and identify them at these age-appropriate levels, because then you can kind of be able to address them, you can find ways to channel some good things into their lives, and you can also reward where you see great things happening. I love to reward my children when I see these virtues being lived out in their lives. In fact, this is a lot of what we talk about in our own home, is when I see you being humble, right? When I see you being diligent about your work or your school, or when I see you being kind, we reward our children off of these things. I want to reinforce these virtues and explain to them how awesome that I think that those are. And then I actually talk to them about these other ones, the vices, that, hey, it's not going to be good for your life if you grow up a greedy person, and let's talk about that. And then now I've gotten to the point with my son, he's old enough, that I actually have this conversation with him. Now try this if you have an older child. Hey, buddy, where do you see greed with me? Where do you see it? Where do you see Dad being filled with pride? Where do you see it? Because I want to actually have my children see that I care enough about these in my own life. So I leave you with that tonight. Now, this has been a little heavier. We're going to end a little happier next week with the virtues. But I want you to take this home. Have a good exercise with it. I'll be interested to see around your tables what you will say. I'm going to leave you with this passage of Scripture tonight. It's in John chapter 6, and Jesus is talking, and this is about the bread of life. And this question comes. They ask him in verse 30, "What miraculous sign will you do that we can see and believe you? What will you do? Our ancestors ate manna in the wilderness, just as it is written, he gave them bread from heaven to eat." And Jesus told them, "I assure you it wasn't Moses who gave the bread from heaven to you, but my Father gives you the true bread from heaven. The bread of God is the one who comes down from heaven and gives life to the world." And they said, "Sir, give us this bread all the time." And Jesus replied, "I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. But I told you that you have seen me and still don't believe." When Jesus says, "I am the bread of life, whoever comes to me will never go hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty,"